Good evening, and welcome to the Interreligious Council of Linn County's 2021 Thanksgiving service. My name is Christina Roth-Klink. I'm the Associate Pastor here at Lovely Lane United Methodist Church, and I also serve as a board member. We are glad that you are here. Welcome to Lovely Lane. Welcome to the Thanksgiving service. To get us started this evening, we're going to sing together the hymn, We Gather Together. Lyrics will be on the screen, but if you enjoy reading from printed music, it's in the blue United Methodist hymnal in your pews, number 131. Please rise in body or spirit.
Well, good evening. Good to see everybody. My name is Alden, and I am the new president of the Interreligious Council of Linn County. I've been with the board, I think, since 2015. I'm also the vice president of the Humanists of Linn County. So, I like to say I am the non-religious member of the Interreligious Council of Linn County. So, it's definitely been a wonderful experience. I've gotten to know some amazing people over the years, and I'm really excited about the direction of where the Interreligious Council is going. You'll see we've, over the last couple years, made some great enhancements to our website, to our logo, and just overall the direction that we're headed as an organization. And to that end, actually, I just want to give you a little bit of an update of where we've been, what we're doing, and where we think we're headed. So over the summer, we actually, for now the second year, have done what we call our summer retreats. And so this year, it was hosted at the Prairie Woods Spirituality Center over there in Hiawatha, and we had a guest facilitator come in, and for several hours we ate and we fellowship, but we also really dug into what we want to see the Interreligious Council become. And we found it to be a very, very profitable exercise. And we're really excited to share with you a little bit tonight, but through our website and through other communications and social media and otherwise, where we think we're going as an organization. A lot of you, of course, know that we sponsor the Ethical Perspectives on the News, which is a Sunday morning TV show. I help host and produce that, as Terry Bowden, I think, is actually here as well. She's our executive producer. And so I hope you enjoy that. We're excited about continuing to bring in new hosts, relevant topics, and really make that what it has been to the community, and that is a venue that people can share controversial ideas, but do it in a very respectful and meaningful way. So again, we talked about kind of where we want to go as an organization. And one of the things we're exploring is just this idea of we have monthly board meetings, and what we want to try to do with those is every quarter try to build out faith experiences for our community. And to that end, what we're for the very first time going to do this next month. We're going to have our annual meeting. It's going to be at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints over here on 42nd Street. And Joseph Miller has been just very great and to help organize this and host this. And so the idea here is that we're going to take once a quarter, be able to go into a faith community. And maybe you've never been into a particular faith community. You've never experienced it. We want to give you that firsthand experience and kind of talk about it. Questions that you might have, why it provides meaning for people, maybe a little bit of its history, etc. So we're really excited about doing that. We feel like that's a way in which the Interreligious Council can really show and represent to our community the vibrant religious community that we have here in Cedar Rapids. And we do have a vibrant religious community. I mean, all you have to do is drive up and down 42nd Street, right? And there's 20 different churches of all different backgrounds. And so we want to give people that opportunity, and we want to show that and celebrate that as the Interreligious Council. One of the other things we talked about was putting together a day of caring where different faith communities can come together and we can really focus on a way of giving back to our local community, right? So we really want to be able to demonstrate that the power of coming together and making a difference in our community. So a lot of things, I won't go into all of it, but those are a couple of things that I wanted to highlight from our summer retreat, but there's a lot more in the works. And we hope you can help us spread the word on how we can come together, celebrate our faiths, but also make a difference in our community. So our annual meeting, as I mentioned, is going to be on December 2nd. There's going to be more details to come. So make sure you follow us on Facebook and you follow our website as well, which is IRCLC.org. Okay, and so those are a few things that I wanted to cover, and but what I do want to do here before we get started and move on to some special music we have prepared for you. I think many of you, if you've been following the news today, we had a very tragic event that occurred up in Wisconsin, in Waukesha, Wisconsin. A lot of people injured. That you may have seen that, where an SUV, through a Christmas Day parade, killed many people, injured a lot of children. And we know there's a lot of people grieving right now, a lot of families that have lost loved ones and have been traumatized deeply. And so out of respect for that, I do want to have just a brief moment of silence as we think through those victims and the grief that they're going through right now. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so I mentioned that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is one of our newest faiths that's represented on the board, and we are really pleased that we have some special music this evening that is being presented from them. And so at this time, we will have them come forward and share that with us. Thank you. That's beautiful. Before we go into our readings, I do want to mention that our guest church here, Lovely Lane, I just want to thank them a lot, right, for what they've allowed us to do here. We have a beautiful sanctuary that, as you know, has been recently refurbished and is absolutely gorgeous. We have this. This is being streamed on YouTube right now. Eric has been wonderful to work with. He has put together a kind of a first-class presentation for us, again, both online and in person here. So I just want to, again, extend our thanks to the host church for allowing us to have the event here. As per tradition, we do have, it looks like about 8 readings from different faith groups. So at this time, we'll have Hassan come up with our first reading.
Good evening. My name is Hassan Saleem. I am the Imam at the Islamic Center of Cedar Rapids and the past president for the Interreligious Council. And tonight I will be sharing with you a reading from the Quran, the holy book and the holy scripture for the Islamic faith. I will be reading from the first chapter of the Quran called Al-Fatiha, or the opening chapter. And it's really very special reading from the Quran because it emphasizes the meaning of gratefulness and gratitude. Muslims read this chapter at least 17 times a day, if not more, in our daily prayers, but we also read it before we begin meetings, before we start communal meals or gatherings of all sorts. And again, the main emphasis in this chapter is gratitude and thanks. I'll be reciting it in Arabic. If you don't understand anything, that's totally fine because I will be translating right afterwards. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. In the name of God, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful, all praise is due to God, Lord of the worlds, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful, sovereign of the day of judgment. It is you we worship, and you we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those upon whom you have bestowed favor, blessings, and grace, not of those who have earned wrath or have gone astray. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Susan Lindell. I'm a licensed Unity leader at Unity Center of Cedar Rapids, and my reading is from the Daily Word, which is a daily reading that Unity has. Inclusion. All people are one in God. I live in a world of magnificent diversity, filled with people of many backgrounds, cultures, and faith. Even as I celebrate and learn from our differences, I also look beyond them to behold all people as members of one family, united in God. Today, I bless all the world's peoples with a prayer of inclusion. I see others as I see myself, an expression of God. I pray that all feel appreciated and welcomed everywhere. I pray they extend that appreciation and welcoming to all others. I pray each person knows a world that accepts them as they are and invites their unique contributions to our shared life. I pray that inclusion creates waves of unity that span the globe, blessing us all. From Ephesians, so then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are citizens with the saints and also members of the household of God.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Miller. I'm currently serving as the interim vice president of the Interreligious Council of Linn County, and I serve as the president of the Northeast Iowa region of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. My reading today comes from a combination of the Bible and other scriptures from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the message is one of unity and inclusion as an expression of gratitude. Scriptures teach of a remarkable community known as the ancient city of Enoch. It was perhaps the only safe place left in an increasingly dangerous world. It likely began as a community composed of many races, religions, political views, and cultures from all over the known world. Yet they created an environment where God could dwell with them, and God eventually took them up into heaven. God called the city's inhabitants Zion because they were of one heart and one mind and dwelt in righteousness, and there was no poor among them. There are many references to ancient and modern Zions on both hemispheres. In most cases, Zion was understood to be simply a location. And when a people sought to obtain Zion by force or conquest, Zion failed. That is because Zion can never exist as a location until it first exists as a condition of the heart. To become like Zion does not mean abandoning doctrines, cultures, political parties, or individuality. It begins by recognizing what we already have in common. First, there is a core identity that we share. We are children of God. Second, there is a human condition we all share. We are earthly refugees separated from our heavenly home. And third, there is a community we all share. We must transform our community into a refuge, a safe place for everyone.
I'm Steve Knutson, senior pastor at First Lutheran Church, and I have been serving on the Interreligious Council Board since about 2015, thereabouts, and have served also as treasurer of the council. A reflection on community renewed, which is our theme for today. The long story of community in the Bible relates how hard it is to experience a common shared community, and that our human heart tends toward smaller communities of belonging and exclusion. Yet what seems second nature to the human heart, our fallen state, does not accord with God's vision for community. Just as a view of Earth from space shows no boundary lines, but rather a seamless flow of land and water, so there is a biblical witness to God's kingdom that lacks boundaries and exclusions. In the New Testament stories of Jesus, we find Jesus crossing boundaries and offering welcome and inclusion that was often uncomfortable to his contemporaries. He includes people that were often of questionable standing in his day, and he offers standing, a welcome of dignity and restoration, whether to children, sinners, those afflicted by maladies, anyone who is marked as other by race or class. Yet what is perhaps surprising to our present-day ears are the terms of that welcome and the experience of community. Rather than seeking out what is high and mighty and worthy of inclusion, Jesus seeks out what is broken, lowly, and hurting. He seeks out what needs healing and restoration. The work of Christ is variously described in terms of redemption, forgiveness, grace, mercy, but the common result is that community may be experienced as gift and grace, as joy and peace. The movement of community restored is one from the mystery of God's love towards that broken reality of human life that yet still seeks something beyond its grasp, a healing of the human heart for a life of love and service for the sake of the world, something God intended from that first community of two in a distant garden.
Hi, shalom everyone. I'm Todd Thalblum. I'm the rabbi at Temple Judah here in Cedar Rapids, and I have been connected with the Interreligious Council since I got here in 2009. I'll be reading a poem here called Giving Thanks by Alden Solovey. To whom shall I give this grateful heart, this joy that shines through the center of my being? To you, my friends, who hold me, support me, and carry me along the way. To you, my God, source of strength and hope. To whom shall I give these praising lips, this gladness that echoes from the depths of my voice? To you, my friends, who teach me, guide me, and honor me along the way. To you, my God, source of wisdom and truth. To whom shall I give these powerful hands, this energy that infuses my bone and sinew? To you, my friends, together we will build this world into a temple of justice and peace. To you, my God, together we will bring the light of holiness and love. Blessed are you, my friends, in our moments of celebration together and our moments of service to each other. And blessed are you, God of all being, source of my life, creator of joy and gratitude. Amen.
Hello, I'm Zwiko Redding, and I am the pastor at Cedar Rapids Zen Center, and I represent the Buddhist faith. I have been connected with the Interreligious Council, I think about 20 years or so, since we first founded the center in Cedar Rapids. And in our faith, what we call the Sangha, the congregation, is one of the three pillars. And it's what nourishes, guides, and sustains our daily life along the Buddhist path. And we think of Sangha as a network of friends who sustain us and to whom we turn, in turn, sustain. Without Sangha, life is barren. And Sangha is not only the community of believers, but also all human beings on the earth. And without Sangha, life is barren. And here's a comment on Sangha from a leading Japanese Buddhist, Daisaku Ikeda. He says, Shakyamuni Buddha attained the wisdom of a Buddha without the aid of a teacher. This enlightened person, however, must have had thorough insight into the nature of human weakness, that left to our own devices, we will find it difficult to persevere on the correct path, let alone attain awakening. This is why we need wise teachers and good friends who at times use strict words to cultivate our growth, while at other times offer us the warm sunshine of encouragement. Only when embraced by such good people is it possible for a person to achieve satisfaction in life. One's life will then be like the sun that continues to shine brilliantly from above, overflowing with smiles. Friendship is something we deliberately pursue and work to cultivate. Without continual effort to do both, it will erode and ultimately fade away. And yet, a firm, beautiful friendship can transcend differences of ethnicity and nationality. In this sense, I feel that the friendship we maintain serves as a clear mirror that vividly reflects the depth, independence, and creativity of our way of life. As you maintain deep faith in the fundamental humanity of others, you will, in due course, acquire true, lasting friendships. Shakyamuni constantly urged his disciples to associate with good friends in order to cultivate faith, and his emphasis seems to me that of a person of great perception and wisdom who had a complete grasp of the inherent strengths and weaknesses of human beings. Thank you.
My name is Brian Doherty. I represent the Baha'i faith. I've been a member of the Interreligious Council since its inception and served as its fourth president. It is not for him to pride himself who loveth his country, but rather him who loveth the whole world. The earth is but one country, and mankind, its citizens. Baha'u'llah. The next reading is a prayer. It was revealed by Abdul Baha, who was named by Baha'u'llah as the center of his covenant. O thou kind Lord, thou hast created all humanity from the same stock. Thou hast decreed that all should belong to the same household. In thy holy presence they are all thy servants, and all mankind are sheltered beneath thy tabernacle. All have gathered at the table of thy bounty. All are illumined through the light of thy providence. O God, thou art kind to all. Thou hast provided for all, dost shelter all, conferrest life upon all. Thou hast endowed each and all with talents and faculties, and all are submerged in the ocean of thy mercy. O thou kind Lord, unite all. Let the religions agree and make the nations one, so they may see each other as one family, and the whole earth as one home. May they live together in perfect harmony. O God, raise aloft the banner of the oneness of mankind. O God, establish the most great peace. Cement thou, O God, the hearts together. O thou kind Father God, gladden our hearts through the fragrance of thy love. Brighten our eyes through the light of thy guidance. Delight our ears with the melody of thy word, and shelter us all in the stronghold of thy providence. Thou art the mighty and the powerful. Thou art the forgiving, and thou art the one who overlooketh the shortcomings of all mankind.
I think we have Marion. There you are. Okay. Didn't see you back.
Good evening. I'm Marion Patterson of People's Church, Unitarian Universalist, and I'm going to soon be joining the Interreligious Council. At People's Church, we covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. The reading tonight is 7 Sacred Pauses, Living Mindfully Through the Hours of the Day by Macrina Wiedeker, Dancer of the Distant Stars. Now the day is over. Gently dance us out of this day into the arms of night. Give us peaceful rest. Night with all its beauty is falling upon us. Let the stardust of your love descend upon us through this night. O mysterious beauty, you are an ancient melody in our lives. Your music lingers in our souls, lulling us to sleep peacefully in the shadow of your wings. O dancer of the distant stars, we are part of your starlight. Renew us, restore us as we sleep. May all your creatures have a good night.
Thank you for each one of those readings. Some of you may wonder, well, how do I, as a kind of identified secular humanist / atheist, how do you relate to this? And one of the things I've contemplated over the years, and as in my involvement with the Interreligious Council and in experiencing these different faith experiences, is just the power of a story to add meaning and value and inspiration to one's life, whether that be in a religious context or a non-religious context. I think we all understand what it means to attach ourselves to some story, to some narrative that is bigger than ourselves, older than ourselves, wiser than ourselves. And every time when I'm listening to these readings, when I'm attending a service somewhere, whether I'm watching a YouTube video, whatever it may be, and I'm hearing things different than maybe what I'm used to, I'm hearing ideas and thoughts and stories that I've never heard before, I'm always sitting there patiently thinking, how can this transform me as a person? It doesn't mean that I have to agree with every single thing that was said, but if you're listening, and you're listening intently, and you're open, you can find things that will help you become a better person, and in turn, help you make the world a better place. And I think that's what we want to do as the Interreligious Council. We're not here to change other people or to proselytize or to get people to convert to our way of thinking. We're here to share our stories, the stories of our lives, the stories of our faith, the things that bring us meaning and joy and happiness, and again, inspire us to make the world a better place. If we can accomplish that as an organization, I think we've accomplished a lot. All right, so at this time, we have our guest speaker, and Scott Samuelson he comes to us here from, of course, Kirkwood as Associate Professor of Philosophy, but I first met Scott maybe 5-6 years ago as I first came on as a guest or a host of the ethical perspectives on the news, as I mentioned earlier, and I had watched several of Scott's videos in preparation for my first hosting gig, if you will. And I think Terry or somebody had said, boy, I tell you, Scott is probably our best host. And she wasn't kidding. If you've ever listened to or watched some of his episodes over the years, I was amazed by how he flawlessly hosted these shows, formed these very intelligent but meaningful questions, and really drew out an amazing, inspiring conversation. And so I really took cues from him, and I thought, boy, if I could get halfway as good as that, I would have accomplished something. So it was a pleasure to have him on for one episode, and maybe we'll have him back again, but it's been really great. And so when we were thinking about who could have host our service this year, and speak, we thought of Scott Samuelson and all that he's done for the organization over the years. I think 14 years with the ethical perspectives, and I know as much as any that that's not an easy thing to do, right? You got to research, you got to be ready, you got to prepare, you got to attend. A lot of great things, and I think it's a real asset to our community. So I'm really looking forward to what Scott has to tell us tonight. Again, it's the power of community. We're all coming back. So at this time, Scott, come forward and share what you have with us.
Yeah, wow, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. It's really my pleasure to be here, and I really want to thank Alden and the Interreligious Council for having me, and also for lovely Lane Methodist Church, and also a real special thanks to the readers who just gave those really inspiring, moving, and instructive readings. I kind of titled my reflections tonight, Variations on Community. Thoughts on belonging, hopefully at the end of the pandemic. I kind of arranged it like musical variations. So I start with a kind of theme, and then I have a few short variations on it, and then I'll come back to it. So I'm calling my theme Soul Algebra. Among Emily Dickinson's many unforgettable lines are these: deal with the soul as with algebra. Over the course of the pandemic, I've been dealing with my soul as with algebra, finding any number of things missing from the equation of myself. Lockdown and its aftermath have been prime opportunities for finding missing X's. For instance, in the days before COVID, I used to meet friends on a perhaps too regular basis at George's, one of Iowa City's legendary dive bars. It goes without saying that during lockdown, I miss the boozy camaraderie and the cheeseburger with everything. But I also found myself missing that weird guy at the end of the bar. You know, that solitary dude with tangled hair and glittering eye who at any moment might launch into a half-hour tirade about his various experiences with alien abduction. My lockdown loneliness was such that I found myself missing that guy. It dawned on me that there was a whole spectrum of community to which I'd long been blind. And it got me to thinking about community, its nature, its value, our hunger for belonging, and various other algebra equations of the soul. Let me warn you up front that I don't have any straightforward classifications of community or handy-dandy cure-alls to our predicament. I have more questions than answers, more stories than definitions. The truth is that soul algebra is probably never resolved. My title is meant in two ways. I'm interested in variations of community's forms, some newer and some older, some better and some worse. I also want to engage in a set of philosophical variations on the theme of community. My hope is that my remarks tonight might open the file marked community in your own brain, such that we can live examined lives in relationship to that weird guy at the end of the bar. Variation 1, what community smells like. The poet and thinker W.H. Auden says, "A man has his distinctive personal scent, which his wife, his children, and his dog can recognize. A crowd has a generalized stink. The public is odorless. We're sometimes part of the generalized stink of a crowd, for instance, at football games or concerts or political rallies. We're sometimes part of a mostly anonymous, odorless public, for instance, when we're surfing the internet. Crowds and publics are certainly forms of belonging, but are they really forms of community? Here's another question. What role do the senses play in community? In particular, what about smell, which locates us in a place like no other sense? Does community have a place, and does that place have a smell? Note well that I asked this question in what's known as the City of Five Smells. My first association with the word community pertains to my job as a professor at a community college. When we went online at the beginning of the pandemic, I found myself missing classroom interactions. The Zoom panels on my computer screen, where students were stacked like a disturbingly multiplied Brady Bunch, just didn't do it for me. I felt a real loss in my class's sense of community. One of the interesting things about a community college is that it's a community of overlapping communities. My office is on the third floor of the Iowa City campus, where many of our Sudanese and Congolese students hang out. When I'd go to my office in the before times, I'd stroll by their lively conversations in Arabic or African French. What I most remember is the strong smells of colognes and perfumes. During lockdown, one of my missing X's was that cloud of spicy scents. While I didn't particularly like my online classes with 30 odorless students suffering Zoom burnout in tiny boxes on my computer screen, I started participating during the pandemic in a new educational venture that we're calling the Catherine Project. And I did find it satisfying as a form of educational community, even though it too took place on Zoom. The idea of the project is the essence of simplicity. Teach great books to students who want to learn. No credit, no degree, no charge, no pay, just learning for the sake of learning. With money out of the picture, we decided on no more than 4 students in the tutorial. Throughout the pandemic, my various 4 students and I have worked through Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, Virgil's Aeneid, Ovid's Metamorphoses, and Dante's Divine Comedy. I love seeing the dramas of each of their clearly visible faces as we tackle profound passages. I love hearing what each of them has to say. We've all learned so much from and about each other, and not because of any community-building exercises. My 4 undistracted students and I have naturally formed a satisfying community around a shared love by sharing our love in a new variation on community. So I guess I do think it's possible to have a healthy community in a virtual space, though its rules are somewhat different from those that govern a healthy community in a real spot. Still, I wonder if we need some decent communities with a few smells before we can have a decent odorless community. Variation 2, when everyone else is on social media. One of the assignments in my Introduction to Ethics class is that students make a plan for the ethical use of social media based on what we've studied from moral philosophers and what we've read about thorny issues pertaining to social media. Then they have to live out their plan for at least 1 week and write a paper about their experience. Almost all of them confessed to being addicted to social media. One student said that she was going to apply Aristotle's virtue of temperance and cut her usage by 1/3, from her usual 9 to a mere 6 hours per day. Many of my students decide to cut out social media altogether for the week, or at least cut it back to no more than the minutes necessary to make plans with friends and family. Again, their experience is almost universal. Suddenly there's birdsong to be heard and sunlight to be basked in. They reconnect with family, old friends, coworkers. They're less anxious. They get things done and feel better about themselves. But here's the kicker. When they have to confront the question of if they're going to continue with their plan, they generally say that it's just too hard, even though they're much happier when they're following it. Sometimes when they're off social media during the experiment, they find themselves sitting with a group of people who are all absorbed in their phones. One student bluntly asked, "What am I supposed to do when everyone else is on social media?" They feel like they're not really real in our society if they don't have a social media presence. Not only is it an addiction, it's an addiction that their community practically requires them to have. Some of my more insightful students will notice that even attempts to use social media virtuously are very difficult, if not impossible. For instance, if they try to be nothing other than nice and supportive on their various platforms, they realize that they're projecting a vain image of themselves, one that often serves to inspire envy in others. But if they try to be honest about themselves, they feel at risk of being mocked or even canceled. They also see that the world of Facebook and its subsidiaries runs on addicting them to a platform that constantly extracts their data to sell it to parties that not only don't have the goods of genuine community in mind, but are actively trying to undermine truth and fellow feeling. Viciousness sells. They feel damned if they do use social media, they're phony and exploited, and damned if they don't. They're unable to participate fully in a culture that's all in on social media. It's common to contrast community, good, with bowling alone, bad. I don't see it quite that way. Everyone has a hunger for connection with an intensity similar to our hunger for food and drink. The question is how that hunger for community is fed. My students, and not just my students, feel simultaneously stuffed and starved. Stuffed with hours and hours of friends and connections in their online communities, and yet starved for the goods of fellowship and even solitude. Variation 3, why we distort our faces. When I'm thinking about community, one of the images that pops to mind is that famous photograph of Elizabeth Eckford, one of the Little Rock Nine, walking with her books into school, with only her sunglasses to protect her from the poisonous racism of her fellow students, one of whose faces is utterly distorted by screaming out scorn on the newly integrated student. What goes by the name community can sometimes be downright rotten. Why are people so powerfully drawn to exclusion? Are our faces always distorted in the act of what we now call cancel culture? The easiest way of generating a feeling of community is by identifying a despised outgroup. We define us most efficiently as not them. I suspect that Americans, hungry for a quick fix for our desire to be connected in a society built on liberty and uprootedness, are particularly prone to this chintzy form of community, and hence to racism, though a quick glance around the world reveals that no culture is immune to its ugliness. Let me be clear. It seems to me that all human communities, even the finest, have to identify a them. To have an us is inevitably to have a them. A community centered on openness and love still must draw a line at unrepentant bigotry or persistent hate. Plus, part of the beauty of a community is its uniqueness. It's not everyone elseness. However, there's a big difference between a community primarily focused on what it is and a community primarily focused by what it's not. Between a community centered on its worth and a community centered on its wall. Take my Catherine Project community as a little example. We're devoted to teaching great books of all traditions, especially to people who might not otherwise have access to the goods of higher education. Sure, if you disrupt our tutorials, we'll bid you adieu. Otherwise, we're overjoyed to share what we do with anyone and everyone who's interested. The only real reason we keep anyone out is that we just don't have room for everyone. So that's what I take to be the positive side of the community spectrum, defining yourself primarily by the grace of your community's internal goods. But I've known people who seem to have a sympathy with great books, and hence for our project, whose primary way of expressing it is by relentlessly complaining about whoever they take to be attacking Western civilization or great books or whatnot. These are folks who'd rather devote their time to a screed against their bête noire than to furthering the thing they supposedly stand for. That's what I take to be the negative side of the community spectrum, defining yourself primarily by what you're not. Isn't this attempt to consolidate a feeling of community by scorning a despised cultural other, an all too common phenomenon? Personally, I don't want my face to grow distorted. Variation 4, how to break bread with the dead. Speaking of great books, I submit that our humanity is seriously diminished when we're not in community with the past. Sure, it can take other forms than reading, but I'd say that books, especially great books, tap into the full range of our humanity like nothing else. For instance, in one of those great books, The Souls of Black Folks, W.E.B. Du Bois describes how his reading of the classics as a black man repaired some of the damage of living in a segregated and racist community. So here's my reading. Du Bois says, "I sit with Shakespeare, and he winces not. Across the color line, I move arm in arm with Balzac and Dumas, where smiling men and welcoming women glide in gilded halls. From out of the caves of evening that swing between the strong-limbed earth and the tracery of stars, I summon Aristotle and Aurelius and what soul I will, and they come all graciously, with no scorn nor condescension. So wed with truth I dwell above the veil. Is this the life you grudge us, O knightly America? Is this the life you long to change into the dull red hideousness of Georgia? Are you so afraid lest peering from this high Pisgah between Philistine and Amalekite, we sight the promised land? I suspect that being part of a legacy of building up something worth loving and passing down through the generations, whether it's scripture or baseball or quilting, is crucial to our flourishing. Let me quote W.H. Auden once more. One of the greatest blessings conferred on our lives by the arts is that they are our chief means of breaking bread with the dead. And I think that without communication with the dead, a fully human life is not possible. Variation 5, where the jazz of community plays. The person I knew who seemed happiest throughout the pandemic was my dear friend John Rapson, a musician and composer and the longtime head of the University of Iowa's jazz department, who, just prior to the pandemic, had been diagnosed with terminal cancer and given only a year to live. He glowed with gratitude whenever I ran into him. It should be said that even before his diagnosis, John had cultivated what I think of as real holiness, his own special mix of curiosity, compassion, and wonder. When he wasn't going on walks with friends and family during the pandemic, he was composing and arranging what would become his masterpiece, A Step On in the Children of the Sun, which recently premiered at the Englert Theater. What does it mean that so many of us wandered through the pandemic in a funk, fearing for our lives and lamenting our isolation, while my actually dying friend savored each interaction and practiced his art in the face of lockdown and death? Right before John died, I helped him publish an article he'd written on one of his heroes, the great Detroit Tiger, Al Kaline. After its publication, I got it framed for him, in part so he could give it to his grandson before he died. That is, so his grandson could break bread with Al Kaline. When the guys at the frame station learned I was giving it to John, they insisted on doing the work for free. They said that they didn't know John well, but they'd had such warm interactions with him that it was the least they could do. At John's funeral this past July, his daughter Hannah said that right after his death, when she was checking out at the grocery store, all the cashiers stopped what they were doing and gathered around her to offer their condolences. She lamented that she couldn't remember their names to thank them publicly. She noted that her dad could have told you every one of their names, which is why they all gathered around her in grief. I think that John navigated the pandemic so well, indeed navigated life itself so well, because he was focused on the jazz of community. In other words, he'd figured out, in part through actually playing in jazz ensembles, that we can improvise satisfying variations on our togetherness. John really wanted to hear what people had to say. He learned not only people's names, but their stories and ideas. He had wonderful stories and ideas to offer in return. His sense of the blues told him that we're all imperfect, and that those imperfections are where we often find connection and joy. He emanated a sense of surprise that things are what they are and that people are who they are. John could play a killer solo, but he was also able to get the various voices in any ensemble to play their solos. He was a great accompanist, too. If you'd known John, you'd know I'm not just whistling Dixie. He really was one of those rare people whose virtues somehow aren't irritating. In short, I learned from John that it's not exactly about welcoming people into your community. It's about welcoming and being willing to be welcomed into a new community. It's about making creative variations on community in which both parties are welcomed. But I have to add to that noble sentiment a brief reminiscence. At our last dinner together, John read me his favorite dinner from The Brothers K, not the novel by Dostoevsky, but the one by David James Duncan, who also wrote The River Wye. It's a passage about basically how we should love and forgive everyone, but how it's really hard to do so with certain New York Yankees. When he read that, John gave out a great big belly laugh. The K of The Brothers K, I should mention, signifies a strikeout. Okay, the end here, I'm calling it my da capo. Who that weird guy at the end of the bar is. During lockdown, many of us had our bubbles, the limited group of family and or friends to which our virus-prone bodies would be exposed. Bubbles were important and reasonable given the circumstances. But these stopgap measures took a toll. My experience of their insufficiency helps me to see a larger and more persistent problem, a big bubble problem. Cancel culture, fake news, safe spaces, identity politics, pods, build the wall, cultural appropriation, anti-vax. All these buzzwords and phrases suggest that we feel vulnerable in our sense of who we are, and that our main response is to dig in and demonize, to bubble ourselves and to distort our faces at those outside our bubble. There's a widespread desperation for a gated community. While we're mostly sympathetic to those whose desire for identity security looks like ours, we're usually scornful or mocking of the snowflakes or bigots whose desire takes a different form. Like I've said, I don't have any great answers to our soul algebra homework, but I don't think that we should be locked in antiseptic boxes. Bubbles aren't enough. I suspect that we all need that weird guy at the end of the bar. Another way of putting it is that we need to be forming more satisfying communities. It's going to take some of John's improvisational spirit and blues sense of humor, if not a certain amount of dumb luck. I'm hoping, after the ceremony, to have a conversation with some of you, particularly in light of this wonderful improvised community at the Interreligious Council, that will shed more light on the subject than what I've been able to do. I'm hoping to hear about your experiences with community good and bad and how you think they're best formed. Plus, it occurs to me that I've been haranguing you now for close to half an hour. It turns out that weird guy at the end of the bar is me.
Thank you so much, Scott. What a gift. That was wonderful. It's my privilege to introduce tonight Susan Johnston, the Executive Director of Central Furniture Rescue. Central Furniture Rescue will be the recipient of tonight's donations that are given here in person or online. And we thank you in advance. When I first got to know Susan, I discovered that this woman who had experienced homelessness more than once in her life had turned her life experience into a passion and a way to practice true religion undefiled. Central Furniture Rescue collects household goods and furniture and donates them to those individuals and families transitioning out of homelessness. My understanding is that as of today, Central Furniture Rescue has furnished 1,700 homes over the past 3 years, 21 in the last week alone. This includes referrals from every nonprofit in the community you can imagine, referring refugees, referring single mothers, veterans, and many, many more of all walks of life. Ironically, the goal right now of Central Furniture Rescue is permanence. Central Furniture Rescue is itself somewhat homeless. Good people in the community have given them a home for 3, 6 months, maybe even a year. They've had to move numerous times. And so your contributions and donations tonight will help them to achieve this goal. But I'd like you to hear from the woman herself, Susan Johnston.
I am honored to be the recipient. I listened to everybody speak about community and about inclusion. All of those things that we heard tonight, everybody who spoke tonight was speaking about Central Furniture Rescue, and you had no idea. We believe that all people should be treated with dignity, kindness, respect, and love. No matter whether you're the weird guy at the end of the bar, or you're recently released from prison, or you're an immigrant, or you've escaped domestic violence, or you just don't have enough money to pay your rent. We believe that every day God allows us to answer the prayers of so many. It just happens to look like furniture. It's the answer to the prayer of the veteran who comes back and he's just really had a hard time and he just wants to be acknowledged and have a home. The prayers of the mama who escaped domestic violence and she's got her kids and she just wants a place of safety and comfort. The young people who outgrow foster care at 18 years old and they have nobody. They just want somebody to care enough to give them what they need to survive. Again, thank you so much. We are honored, and you know, we have to laugh that we're no better off than most of the clients that we serve. We're always a phone call or an email away from a 60-day notice. But we know that at the right time, God will provide. We just hope it's soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. That was so beautiful. Again, on behalf of lovely Lane United Methodist Church and the Interreligious Council of Linn County, thank you for coming to tonight's Thanksgiving service. I'm going to close with this benediction. This is a blessing from Celtic poet John O'Donohue. Like the joy of the sea coming home to shore, may the relief of laughter rinse through your soul. As the wind loves to call things to dance, may your gravity be lightened by grace. Like the dignity of moonlight restoring the earth, may your thoughts incline with reverence and respect. As water takes whatever shape it is in, so free may you be about who you become. As silence smiles on the other side of what's said, may your sense of irony bring perspective. And as time remains free of all that it frames, may your mind stay clear of all it names. And may your prayer of listening deepen enough to hear in the depths the laughter of God. Go now in peace. And if you are in person, we've got refreshments and drinks and cookies and bars and brownies in Fellowship Hall. Thank you.